Salam and peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Layak Siddiqui, the father of Holophase. Episode 12, Part 3, The Licensed Window. The violin in the bazaar. Close your eyes and listen. Imagine you're standing in the middle of a crowded marketplace at the busiest hour of the day. 100 conversations overlap. Vendors shout prices. Donkeys bray. Pots clang. Children laugh. Somewhere in this chaos, a violin begins to play one pure, sustained note. Now, did you hear it? The truth is, you can't be sure. What you heard might have been the violin. It might have been a generator humming at exactly that pitch. It might have been your own mind, expecting music so strongly that it created music from the noise. This isn't a story about hearing. This is the fundamental human condition of trying to understand reality. We're all standing in that bazaar, listening for the violin of truth in the chaos of existence. Where we are in the journey. Let's remember how we got here. Part 1 gave us phi, not a thing, not energy, not space-time, just the bare possibility that difference can exist, the blank page before the first mark. Part 2 gave us comparison, the act of making that first mark. We discovered that all measurement, all science, is comparison, saying this is different from that. Now we arrive at the question that has haunted every honest scientist, every seeker of truth. How do we know when a comparison is real and when it's illusion? This is where Holophase becomes uncompromising. This is where honesty enters. This is where the licensed window is born. The dream that felt more real than reality. You dreamed last night. In that dream, things felt absolutely real. Emotions were real, fear was real, joy was real. The warmth of dream sun felt like real warmth. The comparisons your mind made between danger and safety, pleasure and pain, were vivid and convincing. Then you woke up. Nothing external changed. The world didn't shatter. No cosmic alarm sounded. Yet suddenly, what felt unquestionably real moments ago was revealed as unreliable. This should terrify any honest scientist, because it proves something unsettling. Feeling real is not the same as being reliable. So the question is not, can we experience differences? The question is, under what conditions can differences be trusted? The problem with raw comparison. Comparison alone is not enough. A mirage compares water to no water. A hallucination compares voice to silence. A conspiracy theory compares hidden cause to random coincidence. All of these are comparisons, but we don't build bridges, airplanes, medicines, or civilizations on them. Why? Because they fail one crucial test: coherence. They don't survive repetition. They don't survive independent observation. They don't survive stress, variation, or scrutiny. Holophase makes this explicit. Reality is not what can be compared. Reality is what can be compared reliably. To make that distinction, we need rules, not metaphysical rules, but operational ones. We need a way to say, clearly and honestly, here, under these conditions, my comparison is trustworthy. Outside this region, I make no claim. That declaration is a licensed window. What a licensed window really is. A licensed window is not a physical thing. It's not an instrument. It's not a theory. It's not a belief. It's a contract between you and reality. It says, I claim that within these boundaries, under these conditions, the differences I observe are coherent enough to be treated as real. I accept responsibility for specifying where this claim holds and where it does not. This single act transforms knowledge from opinion into science. Without windows, truth floats. With windows, truth gains weight. The 5 pillars that hold the window open. Every licensed window stands on 5 non-negotiable pillars. Remove any one, and the window collapses back into illusion. Pillar 1. The boundary. Where does this claim actually work? Vagueness is the enemy of truth. I feel warmer is not science. This thermometer reads 25.3 degrees Celsius here at 2 p.m. under still air conditions is science. The boundary answers simple but brutal questions. Where? When? For how long? Under what conditions? At what scale? A claim without boundaries is a claim everywhere, and therefore nowhere. Holophase treats boundary failure as falsification, not inconvenience. Pillar 2. Coherence. How clear is the signal? Return to our violin in the bazaar. If the market is roaring and the violin whispers, coherence is low. If the market quiets and the violin sings clearly, coherence is high. Holophase quantifies this clarity with a single symbol, gamma. That's the Greek letter gamma. Gamma near 0 means pure noise. Gamma near 1 means pure signal. A licensed window requires gamma to exceed the minimum threshold. Below that threshold, you're guessing. Above it, you're measuring. This isn't philosophical. It's practical survival. Pillar 3. Weight. Not all data deserves equal trust. Here's a truth that much of science quietly ignores. Weak signals lie more easily than strong ones. Holophase makes this explicit by weighting data as W equals gamma squared. That's W equals gamma squared. What this means, a clear measurement counts far more than a noisy one. Weak data cannot overpower strong data through sheer quantity. Averaging garbage doesn't create truth. This single rule quietly eliminates enormous amounts of scientific self-deception. Pillar 4. Uncertainty. How wrong could you be? Uncertainty is not embarrassment. Uncertainty is honesty with numbers. A licensed window must state measurement error, systematic error, confidence level, calibration lineage, not approximately, not roughly, but how wrong could this be? A claim without uncertainty isn't confident, it's irresponsible. Pillar 5. Falsification. What would prove you wrong? This is the soul of the window. A claim that cannot fail is not strong, it's meaningless. Every licensed window must answer, what observation would force me to abandon this claim? No escape clauses, no reinterpretation tricks, no philosophical loopholes. If nothing could ever prove you wrong, you're not doing science, you're preaching. The teacup lesson. Let me give you a simple image that captures everything about licensing. Imagine you're holding a cup of tea, perfectly still. You look down and see your reflection in the tea's surface, clear, stable, recognizable. Now a wind kicks up. The tea surface trembles. Your reflection breaks into fragments, dancing across ripples. Now imagine boiling the tea. The surface churns violently. Any reflection is instantly scrambled into chaos. Your face didn't disappear in any of these cases. The medium lost coherence. Most scientific confusion doesn't happen because reality is unknowable. It happens because we tried to read reality from boiling tea and pretended we saw a clear face. A licensed window is simply the act of waiting until the tea is calm enough to see. Why our brains hate windows, and why that matters. Here's something crucial to understand. Our brains evolved to survive, not to know truth. We're pattern recognition machines optimized for seeing faces in clouds. Better to mistake cloud for predator than predator for cloud. Hearing voices in wind. Better to be jumpy than eaten. Finding causes for effects, even when none exist. This served us well on the savannah. It fails us in the laboratory. Without licensed windows, our brains naturally 1. Overfit patterns. See violin where there is only noise. 2. Extrapolate recklessly. This worked here, so it must work everywhere. 3. Ignore disconfirming evidence. That wasn't the real violin. 4. Create convincing stories from fragmentary data. License windows are not natural to us. They are discipline imposed against our instincts. That's exactly why they matter. The camera lens analogy. Think of reality as a vast landscape. Think of your scientific method as a camera. A blurry lens doesn't mean the world is blurry. It means your window is unlicensed for fine detail. Different lenses give different views. Wide angle sees context but misses detail. Telephoto sees detail but misses context. Infrared sees heat patterns invisible to visible light. Microscope sees cellular structure but misses the organism. Each lens is valid for what it's designed to see. The fatal error is 1. Using a blurry lens and declaring the world is fuzzy. 2. Using a telephoto and declaring this detail is the whole truth. 3. Refusing to state which lens you're using. License windows require us to audit the lens before arguing about the landscape. The historical prediction. Holophase makes a bold prediction about history. Any field that produces reliable, lasting knowledge will inevitably evolve toward explicit licensing, even if it never calls it that. Let's test this. Case study, gravity. 1687, Newton. Gravity exists, follows inverse square law. Licensing, implicit, based on planetary orbits and falling apples. No explicit uncertainty. 1798, Cavendish. Measures gravitational constant, g. Licensing improves, torsion balance with some error consideration. Still affected by seismic noise, temperature drift. 2020s, modern experiments. Multiple independent methods. Explicit licensing. Temperature-controlled vacuum chambers. Seismic isolation. Uncertainty quantified to parts per billion. Pattern. Over 300 years, increasingly explicit licensing. Case study, medical trials. 1940s. Doctor observes patients improve. Licensing, essentially none. No controls, blinding statistics. 1940s. Randomized controlled trials. Licensing appears. Control groups, randomization, blinding. 2020s. Pre-registered, multi-center, double-blind trials. Explicit licensing. Protocols registered beforehand, data public, uncertainty quantified. Pattern. Medicine evolved towards stricter licensing as stakes became clear. The prediction holds. Fields that refuse licensing collapse into ideology. This isn't preference, it's structural necessity. The falsification condition. Part 3 would be falsified if a scientific discipline consistently produced reliable, shared, civilization-scale knowledge without ever specifying measurement conditions, signal coherence, uncertainty, validity limits, falsification criteria. No such discipline exists. If one is found, Holophase must be revised. Wi-Fi itself demands windows. Let's connect this back to our foundation. Remember phi from part 1, the possibility of difference? Here's a crucial insight. We never measure phi directly. Why? Because absolute phi has no physical meaning. Only differences in phi matter. What we actually measure are phi comparisons. Mathematically, we often measure things like the average of e to the I times phi 1 minus phi 2. That's e to the I phi 1 minus phi 2. In plain language, we compare two situations and ask, how consistent is their phase relationship? But even though phi is fundamental, our measurements face problems. Noise in detectors, instrument drift, environmental interference, human overreach. So we need a rule that says these phi comparisons are coherent enough to treat as real. That's what licensing does. Windows aren't optional. They're forced by the structure of reality itself. Licensing in daily life. You already use licensing intuitively every day. You just don't call it that. When your phone shows 3 p.m., you trust it. High license. Connects to atomic clocks. More than your guess. Low license. More than a sundial on a cloudy day. Very low license. When deciding if food is spoiled, smell test. Moderate license. Your nose is decent but fallible. Expiration date. Higher license. Based on stability studies. Lab test. Highest license. When judging someone's trustworthiness, their words. Low license. People can lie. Their consistent actions. Higher license. Multiple independent reports. Higher still. We're all natural licensing experts. Holophase simply systematizes what we already do intuitively. The practice. Audit your beliefs. Try this today with 3 things you believe strongly. For each belief, ask 1. What's the evidence? The comparison. 2. How licensed is it? Scope. Clear what was compared. Coherence. Strong signal or noisy? Validity. Conditions where it holds. Uncertainty. How certain can we be? Falsifier. What would change your mind? Example. Exercise improves health. Evidence. Thousands of studies comparing exercisers to non-exercisers. Licensing. Scope. Specific exercises, specific health outcomes. Coherence. Strong signal for cardiovascular health. Validity. Generally holds across populations. Uncertainty. Highly certain for main effects. Falsifier. Large study showing exercisers die younger. Result. Highly licensed claim. Now try with something more controversial. Notice how licensing analysis separates what's well-established from what's speculative. The challenge of frontier science. At the frontier, licensing is necessarily weak, and that's okay. The first detection of gravitational waves in 2015 had signal coherence, just above noise threshold. Uncertainty, relatively high. Validity, needed independent verification. That's proper frontier science. Honest about weak licensing while working to strengthen it. Frontier knowledge strengthens through 1. Replication. 2. Improved methods. 3. Independent verification. 4. Converging evidence. The fatal error isn't weak licensing at the frontier. The fatal error is pretending weak licensing is strong. The ethical dimension. Licensing carries ethical weight. When you make a claim without proper licensing, you might mislead others. They might make poor decisions. Real harm might result. This applies to scientists publishing prematurely, journalists reporting without verification, politicians making policy claims, anyone sharing important information. Licensing isn't just about truth, it's about responsibility. The more consequential the claim, the higher the licensing required. The systematic approach. Windows certificates. Holophase proposes formalizing licensing through Windows certificates. For any claim, the certificate specifies Windows certificate, claim ID, scope, quantities, what's being compared, spatial extent, where, temporal extent, when, conditions, environmental context, coherence, gamma, 0 to 1 value, noise sources, what creates noise, signal to noise, ratio, validity mask, operating range, parameter limits, failure modes, known limits, edge behavior, how performance degrades, uncertainty, measurement error, plus or minus value, systematic error, plus or minus value, confidence, percentage, calibration trace to standards, falsifier, what would prove this wrong, expiration, date for re-verification. This might seem bureaucratic, but consider. Airplanes have maintenance logs. Drugs have testing documentation. Buildings have inspection records. Why should knowledge claims, which civilization builds upon, be less documented? The deep revelation. Licensing reveals something profound about reality itself. The universe doesn't just contain differences. It contains differences that can be consistently, reliably compared under certain conditions. The fact that licensing is possible at all, that we can establish conditions where comparisons become trustworthy, tells us something about reality's structure. It suggests reality has consistent patterns that persist across. Time, allowing repeated measurements, space, allowing independent verification, observers, allowing shared knowledge. Licensing isn't just our invention, it's our discovery of reality's reliability. The ultimate insight. Here is the quiet revelation at the heart of part 3. The universe is not just different. It is different in ways that can be made reliably comparable. That reliability is not guaranteed. It is earned. The fact that licensed windows exist at all tells us something astonishing. Reality has structure. Reality has persistence. Reality can be shared. The universe is readable. The handoff to part 4. We now have phi, possibility of difference, part 1, comparison, how we detect differences, part 2, licensing, how we trust comparisons, part 3. We've built the quality control system for knowledge. Now we're ready for the moment of contact. What do we actually see through clear windows? What is the first thing we can truly measure? Part 4 answers change itself. The first equation, A equals d phi. That's A equals d phi. The first touchable face of reality. Not phi itself, we never measure that, but how phi changes. The fog is clearing. The violin's note becomes distinct. We're about to hear what we've been listening for all along. Learning to hear the violin. You're still in the bazaar. The noise still surrounds you. The chaos still dances at the edge of perception. But now, you know how to listen. You know when the violin is real. You know when it's imagined. You know when to trust and when to wait. This isn't skepticism. This is responsibility. This is how reality learns to be trusted. And with that, the door opens to what comes next. The window is clean. The boundary is drawn. The license is earned. In part 4, we finally touch reality. A equals d phi, the first measurable, the slope of existence. The journey continues. Always peace be upon you.